Well, hello out there, everybody. This is Sam Kilmer, your host of Fintech Hustle podcast. And we have an excellent flashback episode for you today that I get to be joined by my colleagues and rock star band here that I'm going to introduce to you in a second. We're going to take you through today some of our highlights of 2024 and some of the things that we see going on in the business. And who do I get to be with today? Some fantastic people. Like, for example, Stacey Bryant, our director. I think she also does a little thing out on LinkedIn you may have seen called hashtag, what is it, Travels with Stacey? Is that right, Stacey? Something like that?
On the road with Stacey.
On the road with Stacey. Let that be a lesson to you that I'm not on brand. I totally got that wrong. So thank you for correcting me on that. Also joined by Mary Wisniewski, our chief content extraordinaire and editor at large. Thank you for joining us, Mary.
Thanks, Sam. Happy to be here.
Yep. And we have our chief research officer and chief snarkinator, Ron Shevlin. Welcome, Ron.
Thanks, Sam.
And our partner and a chief pocket square enthusiast extraordinaire, Mr. Al Dominick. Ooh, and a mug too. And last but not least, certainly not least, since she's the one that keeps the proverbial train on the rails, our producer, Bailey Wishart. Welcome, Bailey.
Hey, happy to be here.
So let's talk about this. Fintech Hustle Flashback. What is this all about? It's not your garden variety greatest hits album. No. We wouldn't do anything that boring. This is, although I see, nice Fleetwood Mac greatest.
Got to show up with something, Sam. If you're going to have all that vinyl behind you, I've got some props I'm going to pull out just to surprise you. This is the first one. Greatest hits Fleetwood Mac.
Man, I was only expecting pocket squares. You're already outperforming on my, oh wow, we've got, okay.
Everybody has this. Stacey. Well, I have this. Worst case scenario, which maybe that will happen here.
That's awesome. Well, I have to say, just take a moment, Bailey. Tell us a little bit about the kind of the background on this. Was all your idea. I mean, so like if it goes off the rails and it just completely car crashes, this is completely your fault. But it's not going to. It's going to be a lot of fun. Tell us about how you came up with this.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is our second Fintech Hustle Flashback episode. Our first one we did around this time last year. And we were really inspired by Billie Eilish's Vanity Fair series of interviews, which actually I don't believe she's done since last year. So
I'm sorry, who's
on to us, I suppose.
Who's Billie Eilish? Who are we talking about?
Billie Eilish.
Never mind.
Yeah, I'm like, I've never had to describe her before. But yeah, don't listen to Billie Eilish. Go look her up. She's got some cool stuff. But yeah, she did a series of Vanity Fair interviews for about 7 years in a row, where she would go back and look at her answers from the past years and then react to basically herself. And so we were thinking, what's a fun way to just look back at all the fun we've had at Fintech Hustle? And we were really inspired by that, of just, hey, how can we pull up some moments from the past year and kind of see how we've grown, how the landscape has grown, how fintech has grown, or not grown in some cases, but just the opportunity to really look back and kind of see what themes are still prevalent that were coming throughout the year going into the next year. And so that was our inspiration, and we did it last year and it was a ton of fun. So we're like, why not do it again?
Well, since it was such a great idea, why don't we just jump into the first flashback? And I was thinking on this and thinking, boy, my good friend Aaron Simpson over at Encore Bank said, you know what, boy, deposits have to have been the biggest topic of the last year. And I think it was a huge topic on Fintech Hustle. And Mary, I know when we were kind of looking back through some of the things, you had at least one clip that you wanted to take a look at. You want to maybe tee that one up a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, it just speaks to the point of like, it's just not the rate that's driving people to move their money. And so I think it's showing like how the big banks are fighting for deposits and how it's like way more challenging nowadays than ever before. So.
And Bailey, you want to go ahead and tee up the clip from Brian Bauer?
Absolutely.
You know, when it comes to these comments around, Jamie Dimon and JP Morgan and the other large FIs and fintechs that are out there, they've invested heavily. They've invested 100,000 times more than most of these community and regional banks can invest into a data strategy that's leading to the rise in acquisition costs, right? It's not just the fact that the interest rates have adjusted that's led to that deposit competition. It's the amount of customer intelligence, customer information that these large FIs and fintechs are leveraging that are really causing these community and regionals to have to compete, harder for those customers and those deposits.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Anybody else have any comments on Brian's point? By the way, Brian is the CEO of Revio. For those who aren't as familiar with Brian, but now you are. Any comments, Al, Ron, Stacey?
Everyone's jumping in.
I love their faces. It's like we're looking
all at once.
This is a true flashback. Sam stumps us right out of the gate.
Anybody have any flashback moments or epiphanies?
I want to add one thing, Sam, and that's
you bet.
Interviewing a bunch of entrepreneurs this year. One thing I was told on repeat was just like, when it's limited resources, it's actually freeing. So I think that's an opportunity for the smaller banks and credit unions. Like sometimes the confines actually help you get through, like follow a creative project through, which could help lead to more deposits.
Well, and I think just overall, I think Brian was also speaking to, just how competitive people are in use of data and marketing and those things, especially the larger banks who are really staffed up and whatnot. And I know, Stacey, when you and I were at the AFT Spring event at that, was it Wynn or Encore Hotel in Boston? It's kind of like Vegas meets Boston.
Yep.
Not
type of
technically
environment,
Boston, right, Ron? That's outside of the city, but we don't have to split hairs yet again about
Right.
and advertising for AFT.
Yeah, exactly. That was not meant as a shameless plug, but probably even better that it worked out that way. But anyways, Stacey, I remember, and it was something that caught your attention, was some comments that Tiffany Matthews had mentioned. You want to tee that up?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think what called my attention with Tiffany Matthews is really how do financial institutions, more so on the community financial institution side, when you are seeing nothing, data is the new oil. So how do we go ahead as a financial institution? How do we not only use this data, this deployed data for good? And how do you uncover opportunities for retention, for stickiness? She went ahead and she even mentioned something along the lines of using data for financial wellness. So oftentimes there's so many sources of data. And I think that the first number one way that a community financial institution can go ahead and leverage that data is, even on a CRM scale, how do you leverage a customer or member on, all right, when is their pay date? How are they using their money? Where are the payments going? How do we potentially save money on their car note? So that was my biggest takeaway from her mention.
Hey, go ahead and tee that one up, Bailey.
Absolutely.
Using that data to do that and the AI.
I would also say with the data, right? Everybody's always wanting to have the data, but then being able to use that data, not only for AI, but also for financial wellness, right? I work with credit unions a lot. So they're always wanting to find out, right? How do we promote financial wellness? How do we help our members? And with AI, right? Even recently, without doing the big home run, right? Like how much money have I spent at Starbucks last week? And can we use that data a lot?
Too much.
Right. But can we use that data to find out if they can, when are their paychecks coming in? Can they save money on a car payment? And how can we help them, especially with the way the market is right now, right? Interest rates are up. They're taking tons of loans out.
And I'll add this too. There's a lot to be said when it comes to, I've been speaking all across the road this entire year, and regardless of the community bank size or the credit union size, there are probably at least at the very minimum a third, y'all, that they don't know how to start and how to start leveraging AI or automation. And this is the best way on when you think about market expansion, when you think about their geographic footprint, when you think about a credit union or a community financial institution for that matter, what their business development marketing plan looks like. That's the best way to be very prescriptive and understanding how you can go ahead and assist and grow, right? How do you cross solve and not cross sell? I think I heard that in one of our other podcasts.
Well, and I could just a quick shout out to Tiffany, because you may have noticed that Tiffany and Jeff and Mark were also wearing this nice bucket hat. And so I have to mad respect to Tiffany. She's not embarrassed the bucket hat. Take that, Ron Shevlin. And on that note, let's put a bow on this data theme. And go ahead and Bailey, go ahead and tee up the Mark Forbes. Mark Forbes from THL Partners, formerly CTO of Jack Henry, was with us as well during that episode. And he had an interesting comment about data.
We're not making it as easy as we should, right? And I know there's great companies out there that are doing a great job and they're getting there, but we're still not there on complete openness and complete data access. And look, that's as much as my fault as anybody's, right? Just, being, at Jack Henry, I mean, we tried to be open, and I think we have a great approach to that, but it's still not easy.
Mad respect to Mark for not only we talk a lot about authenticity and transparency out there in the market. How about him for looking back on his own accomplishments, or maybe even, wished he could have done it a little bit better or whatever. So I thought it was really interesting on the data side of it. And I know back to the deposits theme, Ron, I know we've spent a lot of time at different events and throughout the year working with Alice and Sarah over at Alchemy, who's had a lot to say about data. And I know there was something that I think had popped out at you about Alice, and you want to maybe tee that one up?
Yeah, she talked a lot about the competitiveness with the big banks and the advantage that regional and mid-sized institutions can have relative to the big banks. Bailey, maybe it'd be better to just kind of tee up Alice. Sorry, I knew you were about to take a sip there. Sorry to interrupt that. But if you tee up Allison's comments, then I'll pick it up from there.
Absolutely.
The Wall Street Journal reported probably about a year ago that over the past 10 years, U.S. consumers have forfeited $600 billion in deposit interest alone by keeping their deposits in the top 5 banks. So clearly, this isn't just if this were a case of, look, it's because I can get better rates at a regional or community FI, that game has been won because regional and community FIs have been shown to provide the better rates. I think the challenge really is, how do you acquire that account holder, and how do you drive a differentiated user experience on top of that? So I think this is beyond. If Chase does that, obviously they're big enough in the industry, it's going to have some kind of cascading effect. But I think that is not going to be sufficient for regional and community FIs to think that that's enough, because they've already essentially been providing better service, better rates. And yet, Chase and the mega banks still have the lion's share of the deposit holders.
Yeah, there's a lot to kind of tee up there, I think, because not to necessarily argue with Allison on this point, but I think she's probably right that the mid-sized institutions do a better service, but that's not something you experience as a new customer when you're in the evaluation phase. And the common thread from Brian's comments, Tiffany's comments, Mark's comments, and now Allison's goes back to the utilization of data. Yep. But, I tend to think of this as kind of a pyramid with 3 layers. At the bottom is data ingestion, accessing the data, the middle piece being about cleaning and sorting it. But then the top of the pyramid, and where the value comes, is in the utilization and application of it. And I think this is why Chase is so good at what they do, because they're making offers to people for $600 bonuses and you don't see mid-sized institutions do that. And the reason is that because that's a total loss to them. But Chase is going to make that up because they're making those offers to people who are going to bring not just the payments activities, but in many cases bring investing funds. And it's just a different way of competing. So the mid-sized institutions are the ones that we guys typically, deal with and talk to. You need to find different strategies and approaches for acquisition that isn't based on, hey, we have better service, or, we're going to they got to find a different angle and path to it, because the data is all saying that the big banks are winning. And if you start looking out into 2025 and the end of 2024, I think there's a big gap now between how the large banks have basically solved the deposit gathering problem, but not the mid-sized and smaller institutions.
Yeah. When I know, Mary, when we were kind of looking back on some points, you had pointed to some comments that Jeff Harper had made of us as the community and maybe regional financial institutions and credit unions start thinking about how they're going to compete and not getting distracted? Do you want to tee that up a little bit?
Hey, before you go there, Sam and Mary, I think, Al, were you trying to jump in with a
I
point
just
and
want
a
to jump
comment?
in because a lot of what we're talking about, it ties back into the potential of predictive analytics. And so when you're on the road as regularly as we are, I think it's hard not to pick up on certain, themes that still have a lot of appeal at the C level and even at the board. And so predictive analytics, I think in 2025, a lot of investors are looking to see a return on what they've invested in. But I think there's a greater appreciation that you have to be far more, forward thinking in your efforts for all the reasons that my colleagues have already surfaced.
That's a good point. I mean, if anybody's heard about it in boardrooms, it's me. How many boardrooms have you been in this year, Al?
That's a trivia question.
Gentleman never discloses.
And here's my other question. This is the more important one: is every time you go into a new boardroom, do you have a new or a different pocket square, or do you have like a consistent?
If we're going to start the hazing, I had a question for you because you pulled you had one hat on earlier and then had another one. Are you as much of a hat hoarder as you appear to be? Because if so, the challenge has been accepted this year. Here we go. Because this is happening last year. There's a hat. Here's more hats. This is the Sam Kilmer tribute to hats.
Noted.
I hope you're getting this, Bailey, because I've got more of them coming out.
Oh my goodness.
This is just what
I'll get my
wife
Yankees.
and family love this. Hold on,
I'll get
Sam,
my
this is
Yankees
for
hat.
you, buddy. This is the Sam Kilmer Memorial Hat Service that we're about to put into place.
Okay, since you did that, I felt excellent.
Okay.
I recognize that
here
hat.
we go. I'm going Sam Kilmer and Ron Shevlin.
This is it.
I like it.
World champion Boston Celtics being represented for our New York friends who are listening.
Very good. Well, Ron, I see. For starters, I happen to know where that hat came from. I recall that was from the Q2 hat making upstairs at the Q2 suite at the Financial Brand Conference, and Ron walked out of that place with that cowboy hat on, and he was making no freaking apologies about it either. And I got to tell you, mad respect, Ron, because I never saw it coming.
I wore it. Actually, I had to wear it on the plane home from Las Vegas because you can't put this up in the overhead bins.
It's giving Blazing Saddles, Ron.
You guys keep talking.
That is awesome. Totally. That's a good call out, Stacey.
Come on.
No. And by the way, since we're giving out shout outs for hats and swag in addition to Q2, which I've got one up on the wall there too from that one.
Al always outdoes me.
Oh man, look at that Stetson, Al. Nicely played.
Yeah, that's a good hat.
I love it. This one here is one that Wayne Miller from ICBA and Bank Tech Ventures, he was handing out at an AFT event. And so thanks, shout out Wayne for giving me yet another hat. Al, to your question about do I refer to myself as a hat hoarder? My wife has referred to me as a hat something, and it sounds a little bit like hoarder, but the word's a little different. I'm not going to go there. So I don't know. Mary, you want to go ahead and tee up our next bit here before we go completely off the rails?
Hey, we have gone off the rails, but it's a nice segue because we're talking about don't follow this shiny object, which maybe you're all hats in this case. But I think
when Sam takes his hat off, that's when we see the shiny object.
Everyone leaves this episode crying. We should have said that at the beginning. So it's just, this clip is all about staying focused. So you're actually achieving business results. Hit it, Bailey.
On it.
I think just to pile on here, I think what I'm seeing when I'm out in boardrooms or on calls with the bankers or credit union leaders and so forth is, technology. They want great technology and so forth, but they're also, I think, changing their focus, coming back home to serve their communities, because everybody was chasing, I want, deposits around the country. I'm going to open up, a special, loan production office somewhere. And they realize these shiny objects out there, but now let's bring it back to our community and serve our community, serve the board that we have there. And so that's what I'm seeing. I mean, technology will play on top of that, but let's get back to banks making money, and let's do it with within our surroundings and so forth, the markets we know. So that's just my opinion.
And Sam, the only thing I'll add to this, it's so funny because I think back in time in my earlier days of reporting, and it's I remember walking through different banks alleged innovation labs, and so you could kind of see it on display. But like there's like this little kid energy sometimes when a new technology comes out, and it just gets funny. But what it's hard to do, I think, from a digital banking executive perspective, is to decide to like quit the thing when it's not making sense or not making sense yet.
Any other comments on that from our esteemed committee of experts?
Yeah, I'll jump in because I think. Oh, sorry, Stacey, go ahead.
No, just really quick, just to kind of reiterate what Mary was saying. When it comes to shiny objects, for those financial institutions that I was mentioning before, and they don't know where to start, right? But a lot of the fintech startups are saying, yeah, we leverage AI and or automation. What does that really mean? And I think that understanding what that looks like a year from now, 2 years from now, one of the main questions I always like to ask is, what is the objective that you're trying to accomplish, right? So is it, are you trying to, is it surrounding organic growth? Is it surrounding retention? Is it surrounding CNI, right? Commercial space. Where are you going? And then what is the objective? And I think that if folks can answer that question, it would allow them to go ahead and kind of reappeal. Okay, this may fit, this may not fit. This may fit perhaps maybe a year or two from now. So
That's almost exactly what I was going to say, Stacey. I would have chosen a little bit different words. I was going to say it's a kind of a chicken and egg problem,
Yep.
where the chicken and egg is, one's the strategy and the other is the deployment and the investment. And without a sense of where you're going, and as you said, what's the objective?
Yep.
Then these things tend to die on the vine.
Yeah, write the ending before the beginning almost.
Yeah, and back to the comment earlier that I was a quote from Aaron Simpson, who said that deposits have been the biggest topic of the last year. One of the other things that Aaron said was, what the topic of the next year is? Fraud. And you guys may have seen here while we were teeing up the last video, I was over at the turntable teeing up some different tunes, and basically I've got Survivor's Eye of the Tiger for any of you who may have that in your workout playlists. And I think if there's any Eye of the Tiger that community banks have been looking into in 2024, particularly on the mid to tail end of the year, it's just been nuts in the area of fraud and scams. And I know, Al, this is an area that you've been hearing about in boardrooms, and we've had some folks on the podcast that have talked about it. And you want to tee up our next segment?
Yeah, and I'm so happy that you only reference music, because this is like right in line for a movie reference of risky business. And we certainly don't need to see any visuals that will be associated with that fine flick. But I think you're right, Sam. Everyone really is super, super, super focused on the rising pace of like just fraud and all the bad actors and how sophisticated they are in the way they're attacking and manipulating, different loopholes that people are trying to close as fast as they can. And it really comes down to the speed and the purpose that an organization has relative to the risks that it's willing to take. So as we become more and more digital and things that were analog become digitized, it just opens up even greater opportunity for, these bad actors to get involved. And that's why I like what Alloy is doing right now. I know we've got a clip from Paralee Edison Wang, having spent time with Kelly, Laura, Keith, Tommy, Kieran, and the really a great group at Alloy. You start to see how some of these tech companies are trying to, really do something meaningful. And I think what she has to say is worth a listen.
I see something new every day. As much of a challenge as that is, it's also really a bright spot I anchor on, because I do have a lot of confidence that as long as there's innovation coming to market and people are able to try it out and test it, we're going to land on the ones that are truly best in class, truly delivering complementary signal, complementary detection. And that's how we're going to balance that, keep the growth, keep the best customer experiences, and, don't create the best experiences for the folks that are trying to steal money, commit scams, or otherwise commit financial crimes. So just the pace of innovation of, like in my world, fraud detection tools that are coming to market is something that really, I see as a bright spot for the future.
Yeah, and Sam, as you listen to her take, I think this is the perfect reminder of why banks and credit unions need to think about their relationships and their partnerships. And it's not a vendor. It's you have to engage with these companies that are moving faster than the actual institution's able to, and leverage your collective, talents and skills.
Really interesting. And I think it was actually in the same episode we had Charles Potts talking a little bit about the fraud aspects and specifically in the plight of community banks on that. And Bailey, why don't you go ahead and pull up that Charles Potts clip, and then maybe we can circle back around to that. I think Mary, you had some thoughts that you probably wanted to add to that.
Sure thing.
It's only going to get more complicated and complex, and the costs are going to continue to rise. It is. I equate it to what the card brands and card processors have had to do over the last couple of decades when it comes to fraud, and that is continue to add layers. As the law of large numbers catches up, it's about taking out a basis point here or there. And the same thing when it comes to fraud and risk mitigation in financial institutions. We're just going to have to continue adding layers of oversight as the fraudsters get more sophisticated, get broader and deeper, it gets more complicated, the technology, becomes more ubiquitous. And so it is one of those areas where I know for community banks, for example, they have to lean harder into their trusted advisors.
Yeah, Sam, I mean, it's such a messy problem that's only getting messier. And, you see some like simpler examples of ways to try to reduce it. And I guess this one's just in my mind because it had news yesterday, what Charlie, the neobank for the over 62 crowd, had launched a feature a while ago, but this year, that slowed down the payments if you're sending money to a new person. So that's like a tiny example of a way that might reduce elder abuse. But just recently they launched something that's like an educational resource, because another problem is like adult children having these conversations with their parents because it's very touchy, and it digs into like having agency and all that. So they put out like a really smart digestible under 5 minutes exercise that's supposed to be an educational tool. So like I'm seeing more like tiny examples of ways to like cut out some of this, but like generally speaking, fraud is out of control, and check fraud in particular is out of control.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Ron, I know this has been a topic that we've been around a lot too, Ron, and I think you were going to tee up some comments here around some things that we've heard from Laura Broderick over to Brigo. You want to take it away?
Yeah, actually, Bailey, would you mind playing that clip from Laura?
Absolutely.
It's not just driving efficiency to take cost. It's really driving efficiency to go secure growth. One of the biggest challenges that financial institutions, particularly community financial institutions, have is access to talent. They're just not able to get the talent or the experienced talent that they need. And so relying on their partners to help them with technology that can kind of bring better and faster and AI, Gen AI infused capabilities in the technology is really critical. So many of them, I think about 20% are considering investing themselves in Gen AI, but almost all of them are saying they really want to rely on their partners to help bring AI into the system starting next year, whether that's with like credit narratives. We're in the compliance business and the loan origination business. So generating suspicious activity reports, like really all the things that normal people are starting to do in ChatGPT, like how do we bring that into our products? And I think our customers were a little scared of that maybe 2 years ago. And now they're saying, gosh, we've got to get on it. Both to kind of keep up with the big banks, which are, Jamie Dimon's got trillions of dollars invested in this, it seems like, and, 600 data scientists or something crazy. So just to try to help these CFIs just kind of compete, it's just so paramount. They have to invest in technology.
No, we can just keep going. I don't think we have to kind of re-edit stuff. I think, where Laura was going on the AI comment is important. And it actually worries me a little bit because I'm fearful that a lot of folks in the industry will look at the fraud and cyber risk issues and just say, well, AI is coming, it's going to fix the problem and take care of it for us. First of all, let's remember that artificial intelligence, more specifically things like machine learning, have been tools have been used in fraud and risk management for, I don't know, 40 years at least 40 years. So this isn't really about the technology. Once again, it is about the data and the data that goes into it. And part of the challenge and problem that the industry is facing, and it isn't a because faster payments is here problem, because, hey, we haven't even gotten into the fact that faster payments as a percentage of the total volume is minuscule at this point. So that's not the problem. Things that Charlie is doing, Mary, that you mentioned, is good for that segment of the population. That's all good. But this is not a panacea that's going to fix the fraud and risk issues. It really, I think, goes back to what Charles said, is not just about relying on the technology providers and advisors, but really about creating more consortium and multi-institution collaboration. That's basically what was behind early warning system from the start with the large providers. I like what Sardine, I think they're UK based, is doing, creating the collaboration at a more mid-sized institution level. I think that's kind of where the right approach is going to come from. But I do, think we got to be careful not to think of AI as some sort of panacea. The other comment I'd make to Laura, and I think we'll kind of get into this a little bit in the next segment, Sam, is that I think there's a hell of a lot more than just 20% of the financial institutions out there looking to use and invest in generative AI tools.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think another thing that Laura talked about was, just that they're struggling with, they may even want to do way more, but they either don't feel like they have the talent, or they are struggling to get the right types of talent motivated to come work at their bank, whether it's, junior talent, coming out of school, or competing with, the SoFis and the lending clubs and the PayPals for certain types of talent. And I think, Bailey, we have another clip here coming up here, Pam Core from Bank Tech Ventures, which I think kind of touches on this a little bit. If you could go ahead and run that, and then we'll open the discussion back up on this topic.
I think one of the things that the banks are going to need to focus on is actually hiring the right talent to manage some of this new technology that's out there. Banks have not been the hotspot of tech and innovation, and that is reflected in the type of hires that, come on. A lot of the folks have been around for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, retiring at the banks, which, kudos to them for their loyalty. But that's not always the most innovative and fashionable thing for the banks to do. So how do we encourage the next generation of bankers who are going to be the customers of these banks to come and work there and help kind of build that out and help foster the change that's needed?
Be a bit of a contrarian to that, idea that bankers, are not as creative. I think that's one of those narratives I would love to see changed in the coming weeks and months and years, because when you have people who are experienced within an organization, they understand some of the cultural obstacles that occur that prevent things from getting done. And so to ignore the fact that in heavily regulated industries like we're in, there's times where moving a little bit slower actually is a smarter risk position to take. And so, I find that a number of banks get turned off when they hear a tech company say, well, you've been here too long, you're not innovative, you're not entrepreneurial. I found there's a number of banks that are pushing, especially in the regional and community side, to really incorporate technologies in very meaningful, compelling ways. They have clear outcomes in mind, and they're starting to look at their talent recruitment plan, much like they have like a lending pipeline. Now they have a talent pipeline, and they're managing it accordingly. And I just get a sense that old chestnut of, well, banks don't have the same type of appetite to grow and create. I don't know that that's entirely true.
Well, and you and Al, you and I ran into Kelly Brown at the Jam FinTop event last year, and I know she had some comments at AOBA this year that we just captured. I think she kind of talks about maybe some of the ways that they can continue to build out with just call it a pipeline of talent. And I think that's our next clip, Bailey, if you want to go ahead and run that.
From a succession standpoint, when we've had as much M&A as we've had, training programs are gone by the wayside. The typical track that I was on with credit, management training, all of those things are shrinking. We've got to do more as an industry to promote youth, young people wanting to get into our industry.
Yeah.
In the state of Wisconsin, we started the Marquette University banking program that's specific to finance majors, and got a group of banks nationwide to help us with that, because succession is the key.
huge.
It's huge.
And that's spot on, because I think that, for COCC, we created a leadership program specifically for that. So we had younger individuals that needed to understand a little bit more about leadership. Specifically, they had the tech skills. They can understand that, but it's the leadership piece that was missing for them. So, that was really important for us to see that with our own employees, and being a great place to work is really a driving factor for many individuals looking for a new job.
I think about, I loved how both Kelly and Sue Selecki in their own ways gave, their own examples as far as how to promote finance, right, in this day and age, right? And similar to AI and automation, and again, I keep saying this over and over again, if I had a dollar for time I said leveraging AI, I think that those roles have to consistently be evolved. And what I mean by that is, let's start at the grassroots level. So let's look at maybe tellers, branch managers, and how do we as the executive team, how do we empower them? I know when I was at a previous financial institution, one of the leadership initiatives, so to speak, was running a Gallup, strength finders. And it was very empowering for me to see what my top 5 strengths were. And then I did that with my team. And then we did it maybe every other year, and then also being SMEs in different projects, right? Having a walking a day in the life of a C-suite folk, right? And what that looks like, what that means. I'm a big proponent as far as like, you don't know what you don't know, and you can't be what you can't see. So, I think oftentimes when I'm on the road and I hear from so many CEOs, the lack of preparedness when they're facing unexpected leadership changes within the next 5 years. A lot of these folks are from 5 to 7 years plan to retire. And, we think about cultural preservation. We think about that limited talent pool. So I think that the emphasis now more than ever is to really take a look at who do you already have in the building, and how do you empower them, and how do you go ahead and maybe just like give them that confidence boost rather, to take off. So that's my take on it. What do you guys think?
I'll jump in, because I think this is fundamentally a marketing problem.
Mm.
And when I say marketing problem, it's because the banks and credit unions think about marketing as selling their products and services and positioning themselves to the community from a member and customer perspective, not from positioning the institution from a employment perspective. The fintechs have come around in the last 10 years and have gone out to the environment and said, hey, do you want to have an impact, a big impact on consumers' lives, and come to the fintechs? And guess what? They have minuscule impact on the community compared to what the existing banks and credit unions have. But they don't position it that way. Yeah. They don't say, you want to have an impact, come determine, an impact, consumers' financial lives. The fintechs have controlled the narrative on that, and that's a marketing problem.
Mm.
And so, yeah, there's an opportunity to fix that. Al?
And well, Ron, you're saying something that just brings up a memory of when Jonathan Rowe was the chief marketing officer at Encino. That was one of his primary responsibilities. And I always thought that Pierre Naudet, their CEO, was so smart to charge Jonathan with that. So as he's talking about the positioning and the messaging for Encino to the community, it was with an eye towards attracting the best talent. And one of the themes that has come up over the last few years is, how do you create an organization that is seen as a magnet for talent?
Mm-hmm.
And so Stacey's point of lifting up folks from the inside is important. Also, to create a culture where you want to contribute and you see a future, I think is huge. And I want to take this full circle back to Kelly, because we gave her a Gonzo Banker Award last year for, I think it was "Don't Bore Us, Get to the Chorus."
Mm-hmm.
And Sam and I saw this, and to the marketing end, she was given by Jam FinTop 2 minutes to kind of pitch what ampersand does. And she got on stage and was so awesomely bold in saying, they gave me 2 minutes, and I only need one. She hammered the point that they help organizations with more than $250,000 in cash deposits reduce their risk of loss, and then dropped the mic and walked out. And she had so many people, A, impressed with her presentation, but be curious about what ampersand could do for them, that I feel like you're all spot on. It's marketing, it's communication, it's how do you tell a story that resonates.
Yeah.
This year, I think we're going to have to add a new award to our Gonzo. If we have the Don't Bore Us, Get to the Chorus award, which just offends my sensitivities like you can't even believe. I think we're going to need to add a new award on the for the if it ain't got a jam, it ain't worth a damn award, because that's really where the creativity comes in, Sam. Okay, I got my 2 cents.
Okay, that's filed. We're going to file that one away.
No, I love it, though. 2 things. One is offending your sensibility will be a new aspiration of mine, Ron. I love this. I love the way you characterize that.
Daily basis, Sam.
But also, to Kelly's, to the point about Kelly, just, in terms of one of the other topics that we saw during the year, which was sort of just called the consolidation of bank, credit union, fintech, and investors, kind of like into one big soup. I think Kelly's a great example of that. She was started out as a banker. She then became a co-founder, then private equity member, and then now she's a fintech founder. And so she's sort of like we call them a trifecta, 3 in 1. And I know, Bailey, if you tee up the next segment, we've got a quote in here from Circle Collective's Nick Evans, and they're a venture fund in the credit union space. And I think he's got some interesting comments here.
That forward-looking, how do you become part of a platform? How do you make your company a platform play? I think, Stacey, you said it best, and Ashish identified this 3 years ago at his company, and he went out and we helped him do 2 acquisitions. Eltropy bought MarsView and Pop.io, and his mentality now is, hey, I'm a platform company and I'm going to grow and continue to be a platform company. And so those are the things that I see as a problem right now with there needs to be consolidation.
To consolidate or not consolidate? That is the question. And I think I want to just say this.
Stacey Shakespeare, everyone.
I also, there's also magic or just so much truth in stay in your lane, and it's okay to stay in your lane. Right? I think it's okay. And I think that also there's just, when it comes to all these fintechs and what they're trying to accomplish, you can't be, you can't be everything to everyone. So that's just those 3 bars in and of itself. So that's all I wanted to say there.
Yeah. Hey, Ron, anything on this? I know Nick talked a little bit about platform. I think that might be a different way than we talk about platform, but I thought that was kind of an interesting point that he made around doing the acquisitions to kind of expand the portfolio so that it's not just a real niche product play. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I think we got to be careful. I think what Nick was referring to when he said platform was thinking of it more from a technology platform, kind of more of a plug and play type of thing where, your strategy from a technology provider perspective is multi-product. And I think that's what he was referring to with Eltropy and Ashish Garg, who he was alluding to. But I think broader, we got to be careful not to confuse what Nick was using, how Nick was using the term platform with, say, an Amazon platform strategy, which is more of a business model approach where you're selling to both providers and consumers and users, and you're sitting in the middle of that, basically generating revenue from both sides of the coin. There are firms that I see out there, fintechs. Lone Spark is a great example here in the Boston area, which is really trying to position itself as a small business lending platform, meaning that it is providing services to the providers of small business loans, the banks, as well as enabling services to even other technology companies who provide the technology for lending to those banks, who then ultimately are actually going to the small businesses, but they're not, that's not even where it is. But that's that's a platform business model, not just a technology platform. And I think more and more that's, where we're going. And, I think, Stacey, your point about consolidation, again, got to look at that from both the technology provider perspective as well as the financial institution perspective. And, I think we'll continue to see, especially now with the administration change, a little bit more optimism on M&A within the industry.
I know, and on this topic of kind of the mashup in the industry of the investor world, I know I think we have a clip, Bailey, from Nathan Baumeister. If you want to go ahead and run that, and I'd love to get Al's perspectives on this guy. Al, you know Nathan as well from our AFT circles.
Sure thing.
For the longest time, the technology providers within the banking industry, or the fintechs, were seen as something scary, bad, perhaps competitive, some folks that you had to stay away from. And I'm just really seeing this tangible collapse of the communities for all of us to realize that we actually all coexist and have to work together to be able to do it. So it's not just reaching out to competitors between bankers to bankers, credit unions to credit unions, or fintechers to fintechers, but actually how can the whole ecosystem come together? And I think one of the most tangible places that I've seen that come to action is all of the different VC funds that have been put together, where financial institutions are actually the ones that are putting the money in place to invest in and drive growth for fintech companies and technology providers who are working on solutions that are helpful for the greater ecosystem, and then rather, putting it back into the marketplace to make it all better, to make sure that they're doing stuff to help the industry move forward.
Yeah. So, what Nathan's talking about is super important, but I think it's something that everyone recognizes. You've got Canopy, JM FinTop, Mendon Venture Partners. You can go down the line of Patriot, which is invested in ampersand. And they're able to have these LP bases that have an interest and appetite and an expectation that they get a front row seat to see what's happening. Now, when Nathan's talking, I'm just I promised props. Bring my guitar so I could be official, much like Sam is. As I say, you got to figure out who are you going to play with, like who's in your band. And so, figuring out not just where you're getting money from, but are these organizations, are they giving you the exposure to the type of risk forward thinking institutions that can actually work with you? Now, I think I'm unfortunately bringing Sam's guitar into focus, but and you got a new hat on too, my friend. It's just cool to see somebody like Nathan, who is known for doing backflips at certain conferences, but is a tech company that was spun out of Eastern Bank up in Boston, doing some really great work on behalf of really community banks that need that spark of innovation and creativity.
Good stuff. Good stuff. And I know I want to be mindful of schedules because I think we're over time here, guys. Thanks for your flexibility. We'll try to get this wrapped pretty quick, but kind of moving on to our last topic here. I go to market effectiveness, whether it's a fintech or a bank, just to Ron's earlier point around, there's a marketing problem out there, a broader marketing problem out there. I know this has been a big topic. Mary, I don't know if you want to maybe tee this one up a little bit in terms of one of our first clips.
You know what, Bailey, let's get into it and I'll tee it up after it as a recap.
Sounds great.
I like to watch for what's the truth under the covers of the pitch. Obviously Finovate is all about the 7 minutes of the demo pitch, but how can you discern who's really got a good story underneath? And that answer is actually going to be different for everybody and the perspective that they're bringing. So, maybe you actually do need a Gen AI flavored solution because it helps you get started in that area. But maybe, you're far beyond that as an organization and your goals are a little more, either concrete or larger scale than that. And you actually need a real AI solution, if you can call it that, right? That you actually have some really good defined use cases that you need to scale, and you need something different than I just need a veneer on top to help my humans interact with this information in a different way, which those tools are particularly well suited for.
Okay, I'll be honest. My computer froze during the replay of that clip.
Well,
Sam, I tossed the ball.
No, it's no issue. I think one of my big takeaways there, and would love Stacey's input on this as well, is because she was there. Stacey, as you probably saw, was there with me with Barb. Is that Barb was first of all, she started out talking about she was digging into the pitches. Mm-hmm. She wanted to get a clear sense of back to Al's point around Kelly Brown. Kelly, she basically said, look, I don't even need 2 minutes. I got this.
Yep.
1 minute or less. Barb, Coastal Community, she's looking at these pitches at Finovate. And like many of us, what she's finding is, 5 or 6 times out of 10, it's a nothing burger. And they take way too long to get to the point. And it makes it very difficult to get the message across. And I think many of our bank and credit unions that we see out there in the market are struggling with this too. To Ron's point, it's like product, services, and fees. It's like, how are you different? So that was my takeaway from it. What about you, Stacey?
For sure. I'll just add, get to the point. You've said this numerous times when we were at Finovate Fall and Work, Sam. And, I know you and I simultaneously sat on a lot of those 7 demos. And, maybe 4 minutes in, I'm like, okay, what are you solving? And, and if you put the hat of an executive, over at an FI, you have to who, what, where, when, why. What is the solve? What's in it for me, right? I think we've all said this in previous podcasts and episodes and conversations. And then and then that kind of lands the opportunity of an organic, hey, I'm looking forward to a follow-up call or a follow-up meeting. And then, the rest is history. So big on storytelling, as you mentioned earlier today, and get to the point. What are you solving? And I think that Barb just said it so beautifully. I have it like all over my screen, the truth under the covers of a pitch. So I think that honestly, I know Kelly nailed it in a minute or a minute and a half, but there's pure magic into understanding and practicing what that looks like in under a minute, because that's all you have. I was, in an elevator with a couple of executives a few months ago, and I nailed a pitch in 35 seconds, literally from like the 20th floor to the first floor. So maybe fintechs have to be on an actual elevator and start practicing all over and over and over again. Because again, you think about these folks are looking at demos consistently, are getting reached out, so.
Well, and Al, Melissa Kopp from Neural Payments was chatting with you and I, and Sarah Fankhauser from DCI and Jake Bauer from Array about this getting to the point. And I don't know if you want to go ahead and tee that one up, and I'd love to get Al's take on that or Ron's take on that, either one of you guys, just to get a sense for how Melissa goes about it.
We have one slide that I love that actually has 4 bullets on it and puts the problems in real life examples, right? And because getting them to think about these things in terms of how it affects their cardholders, their members, that's how it clicks.
Perfect.
That's how it clicks. Yep. What do you think, guys?
A+. Nailed it. But Sam, I'm now back in memory lane. Ron, maybe you remember this, but the early Finovate demos, wow, they were strange. There was a lot of role playing. I recall, sort of buried it in my heart and soul, but there was like awkward role playing. And I do know this for a fact. Fintech people will hire actors to train them how to like speak in front of a crowd, because it's like there's a true art to charisma. So
Totally. I mean, and I think the other thing about whether it's jumping on an elevator to physically actually move up and down floors, to Stacey's great. I mean, for starters, give yourself some type of a physical barrier or limitation, or hiring actors. I think the other thing about it is get creative, do something different, get the heck out of your office.
Yep.
And as I'm thinking back out on the conversation that we had with Melissa and also with Jacob, I think Jacob had a point or two around creativity. And Bailey, if you want to go ahead and tee up the clip on that, we'll talk about it.
Sure thing.
We all need to do a better job of marketing and branding. And, we're in an industry that's not necessarily the most fun, let's call it, right? I mean, it's banking, it's serious, it has a lot of risk in it. And so for us to sort of step outside our comfort zone and think about things differently is something that I think we're all after.
Well, you know what else I loved, though, Mary, reminded me of something that you said before. And I'm trying to remember, you had, I think it was Tansley Stearns on Money Isn't Everything podcast. Yeah. And you said something about, one of you said something like, this is either boring or this industry is not fun. Yeah. You heard Jacob on here say something like, it's scary. It's not always fun. And I think you made a comment. Hey, you tell people all the time, hey, we have fun. We know how to have fun in this business, right, Mary?
Yeah, I have an interesting perspective because I did not purposefully join this industry. I covered high-end jewelry, fell into it, was like, oh no, this is awful. I'm covering the debt collectors and the tools they use to collect money. How did this happen? But then when I realized this is about an identity crisis, and it's like, what a drama. There's so many dramas in this industry. And so this is a really colorful industry. There are so many plots, so many scary plots, and a lot of fun things too. So yeah, I think, I love the movie, or I did. I wonder if I would now. Thank You for Not Smoking. And I feel like this industry has a similar problem, but it's like better than smoking, obviously. But like it needs a spin because it doesn't seem like the natural place a lot of like creative people would naturally go to or think of as like an opportunity to rethink things.
Yeah, I tripped over this industry too. And I remember telling a friend of mine that recommended that I work for a bank. I'm like, why would I do that? It sounds boring.
Yeah.
And he told me all the reasons why. And then I started out at a bank and I tripped over this industry and I woke up and I was like, I don't know, 50 and had 3 kids. And, all of a sudden it was like I was grown up. But I guess just a few quick closing things out of gratitude. First of all, I'm thankful for every one of you guys. I feel fortunate I get to work with you every day. Secondly, I'm fortunate that we get to work with a lot of really fun people like Kelly Brown. She's just like full of energy, full of solutions, full of getting to the point. But also, you heard Jacob there. One of the things that Jacob pointed out on the podcast was he was traveling with his dog Remy. Talk about fun. And so let's make sure we have a clip of Remy up at some point or a pic at some point. And then also I had a great chance. I know, Al, you too. We've had a chance to work with Tom Shin many times this year. Anyway, the point is these guys both travel with their dogs. I find that really intriguing. We have dogs here, Charlotte, my wife Charlotte and I. And so we've been talking up the dogs of fintech as a little bit of a ruse. But you know what? It's a lot of fun to be around all you guys. And no, I'm not calling you dogs. I'm saying it's fun to be around all you guys, as well as the dogs of fintech. And then, if I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't say, I'm really pumped for the Gonzo Awards that are coming up. I've even got my merch out. So I would just encourage everybody that's joining the podcast today. Thanks for joining, but also make sure and join us on the Gonzo Awards. And with that, I want to say thanks to everybody and see you out there on the road.
Thanks, Sam.
You guys.